The AI itself, if it has bad data, then it will produce hallucinations or false information. Here, we're talking about neural networks, which has the potential to be self-replicating or self-learning.
President BBM, pag nagsispeech siya, ang daming mga 600,000 emoji na parang kinatroll siya, di ba?
We're not using it because there is no law and we're not into the habit of breaking any law. There's not even a law penalizing troll farms. Tomorrow, we raid a call center and then they admit employing 100 people as troll farms.
Yeah.
What's
What's your legal base?
your legal case?
Right.
I mean, what do we do?
Trolls, disinformation, and national security. These are extremely important themes that we want to talk about today with someone who knows a thing or two about them. And of course, no less than Usec Jeff. Thank you very much, Usec. Again, of course, we have been having a lot of conversation over the past few years on this issue. But ngayon, medyo mas yung star value mo ay umakyat pa lalo, diba? I mean, because of your yung mga congressional hearings. Balita ko dun sa congressional hearing, dahil hindi sumipot yung ibang trolls, ina-attack nila ako. Bakit si Daria na hindi niya pinadala? Because I posted something last year based on an interview, and this is important because we want to go to basic definitions, right? So I posted something around, third quarter of last year that the International Criminal Court could likely come up with a warrant of arrest against the former president. And that was based on my conversation. This is on the record with Justice Carpio, who had his own contact. And I had just actually returned from The Hague, and I had my own people to talk to there. And all of them, they were saying na nagre-reach out na yung ICC for coordination and all. Now, obviously, it didn't happen. So I realized that some of our friends are using that to say, di ba si Darian fake news peddler din siya? So, Usec, you tell us, was that fake news or just wrong prediction or like optimistic prediction? How can we make a distinction between malinformation, misinformation, disinformation?
Very good.
And, so essentially, what are these 50 shades of, malaise when it comes to informational?
That's a good question, Richard. No, kasi meron na ngayong trilateral committee hearing, and then people are just saying, "Oh, this is against freedom of expression, etc." So let's just clear things out. Do you know that misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation is so important a concept that the United Nations themselves have defined it? No, so it's now there is now a global definition about it. So let's start with misinformation. Misinformation is just wrong information. And everybody can be wrong. And so we're not against that. We're not after those people who sometimes make bad predictions.
Sorry.
Like, sorry. Akala ko akit yung stock market, hindi pala, etc. I thought that this and that, these are diba, to err is human. So that's misinformation.
It's just a faux pas.
It is.
Yeah, okay.
But disinformation is different. Disinformation is using incorrect information to influence. So may malice na rito.
Right.
So that we're against.
Yung
And
ba
then-
yung fake news? Pa?
Yun yung fake
Okay.
news, yes. And then last but not the least, yung malinformation. Now, this is very difficult, especially dun sa mga kabataan ngayon na, alam mo, 3-second, ano na lang tayo eh, 3
Attention
second
span,
attention
yeah.
span.
Yeah.
Malinformation is using correct information, but removing the context or putting it in a different context. Example, meron ako kunyaring suot na mamahaling relo, pero hiniram ko lang yon. And then palalabasin nila, oh, kita mo, he can afford a 1 or 2 million peso watch. He must be corrupt. So they took a correct photo and then they used it in a different context. Another example, BSP selling gold. BSP selling gold is nothing different. It's not malicious. It's a regular thing. But then you use that correct information and put it in a different context as if parang nagiging malicious yung ginagawa ng BSP. That's malinformation. So what we're against, and what we have to guard against is disinformation and malinformation. Now, everybody can err. Misinformation, we're not against that. As long as you say, I'm sorry, I was mistaken.
Oh yeah,
And
we gave a million caveat. Si Justice Scarpio, meron pa siyang di namin sinabi anong taon. Something like, lalabas yan sa September, but we didn't say 2024. So, immediately.
So, and everybody makes such predictions. So,
And then sometimes goes right. And, for me naman, my explanations ko is at the end of the day, it's an executive decision and I don't control what the president wants and what DOJ wants. Sabi ko, it was just an understanding that at least on one side of the equation, there was a certain push for that. Anyway, I know that's not within the purview, but I think that was important. because literally some of the people na show cause or there were reciting, our case, my case, and Justice Carter said, bakit hindi silang tinatawagan? But I think I'll be called to that TRICOM, but as an expert. So, manda kayo, yung mga who went after me. But isn't then malinformation a subspecies of disinformation? I mean,
That's correct. Yes.
like rather than a separate category, I think it's just a subspecies. I have, ako kasi parang expose ako dyan ng matagal dahil sa issue ng West Philippine Sea.
Correct.
Napansin ko na yung mga, I mean, let's call them for, yung mga pro-China trolls or yung mga hindi ganyan kamakabayan na mga kaibigan natin, hindi ko nasasabihin na makapili. Talagang yung mga sinasabi namin, kunyari, ito yung dapat gawin natin sa West Philippine Sea. Pinapalabas nila na warmonger kami. Gusto namin guluhin. Parang, hindi. This is just deterrence, right? Or we will cite international law or UNCLOS, and then they'll take it out of context and say, no, but you cannot, but China invoke exemption. But so nakita namin there's a lot of selective usage of information and references to international law that makes it look very credible. And some of these purveyors of disinformation at least have some background in international law or international relations. So it gives them also kind of a false authenticity. So I'm not surprised na itong playbook na yan is now being used across a whole range of narrative building at the expense of our national security. So, Usec, for the purpose of our audience, para maintindihan nila, ano yung mga biggest concerning malinformations na nakita natin na may pakiang DICT? Because, I mean, kung marites lang ito na malinformation, hindi na natin hawak yan, di ba?
Yes, yes. So, sometime in July of last year, we called a disinformation campaign where they're quoting the president as if he's calling for retaliation sa China. Disinformation yun kasi ginaya yung boses niya pero hindi siya yun. Another form of disinformation is nung kinopya yung itsura niya tapos parang may, as if may ano siya, no? May tinitake siya na
Right,
drug.
this is the whole Polveron,
Yeah, the Polveron
fake
thing.
news. Yeah.
So that is disinformation. Now, malinformation. Malinformation, for example, is that the archipelagic law does not apply to the Philippines. So that the Philippines has no continental shelf. And this is being paraded by quote-unquote academics that are pro-China and saying that, technically speaking, the Philippines has no claim, there's no EEZ and has no claim to any part of the sea because we're not part of any continental shelf. We're just small islands put together. So that's one way of saying malinformation. Kasi number one, you're saying you're an academic, but you're not. And then number two, you're saying that, oh, by the way, this is part of international law. But it's not. Di ba? So, pero tama naman, no? The archipelagic regime is a pretty recent
Right.
no, it's a pretty recent concept, 1970s, 1980s concept. So these are the types of malinformation that we're seeing. Another example, no, you've heard of the recent, and we thank the NBI, the Bureau of Immigrations, and the Armed Forces. No, this was in the news. We apprehended some Chinese nationals who seems to be employed in espionage.
Right. By the Ministry of Security Service, MSS.
Yes. And of course, China would say, eto na yung malinformation. Or actually, hindi nga mal eh. Disinformation talaga kasi kasinungalingan. China was saying, oh, but you're not respecting their rights. You're not even allowing us to visit them. As per our agreement. But actually, the report of the DFA is saying, no, we actually are allowing visitations from the Chinese embassy to these Chinese nationals. That's one. And number two, let us be clear about this. The evidence is quite strong regarding the espionage.
Caught red-handed.
Yeah, they're flying drones on top of bases.
Military grade.
Military
grade. It's like,
plus their cars have a built-in camera that's telescopic, etc. No, it's not normal for people who are tourists to have cars with
baka sa Shopee lang na binili yan or Timo, baka ano.
No, but I mean, would you have a LiDAR system in your own car? Come on.
Maybe I'm a geeky guy and just... Yeah, but so actually we were in a press conference together with sila Usec Malaya and also a couple of other officials when that happened. No? They were breaking. There were also cases in Palawan, if I'm not
That's
mistaken,
correct.
tourists
Yes.
who were
Yeah.
haplessly stumbling into some very sensitive
Yeah.
areas.
And let's face it, some of our nationals were also in the past apprehended in China for similar
Mm.
cases, and some of them are also are civilians. No, so but we're not raising uh, any major concern.
Wait, so
But
tanggap na natin.
no, yeah. So sabi ko nga, kung nangyari sa China, baka baka walang press con.
Ay, wala. Yeah. There's no press freedom. So what you're saying is that meron tayong mga ebidensya na very high grade
Correct.
efforts. Now, can we make a distinction between cheap fake and deep fake? Because
Yes.
isa pa yan di ba? Na parang parang it's so rudimentarily done or hindi masyadong yata naka-premium subscription yung ibang kaibigan natin at gumawa sila ng kung ano.
I showed you one example, no,
Back in the day, yeah.
I think when you interviewed me last
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
of you
yeah.
pinay-swap namin yung itsura mo.
My voice with President Marcos
Yeah,
Jr.,
with President
right?
Marcos
Yeah.
Jr. So that's an example of a cheap fake. Usually, a cheap fake is an application that we can buy online, and then we just use it to swap faces. We call it face swap, or to change yung tone. But deepfake is different because deepfake was really meant to even surpass biometric systems. Ibig sabihin, talagang dinadaya nila para magmukhang ikaw. So this is not only AI, but they also use professional tools in order to make sure that the differences are almost not visible.
So lahat ng nuances kukunin
Lahat ng
nila yan.
nuances, pati yung color palette,
Grabe,
etc.
yeah.
No? So it's a combination of AI plus a combination of human photographic professionals that uses it.
Not that I'm interested from a business standpoint, but how expensive it is, I mean, in average, to make it really a solid, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes deep fake video of anyone
I don't
else.
think it's that expensive.
Yun nga, just to give an idea that actually even the not cheap one, the deep one, the real one.
Well, the
is-
cheap fake is
cheap
like
is cheap, right?
like-
Anyone
like
can
$5
do it.
US.
Yeah, exactly. But I was thinking like, if it's also not so expensive, the entry barriers are so low, then it's actually quite scary.
It's not expensive kasi usually you use it with AI tools and then Photoshop or some video editing tool which you can buy for less than 100,000
Yeah.
pesos. Yun lang ang kailangan mo lang mas professional. So usually it takes days for them to create the video kasi may ano siya. Actually, similar to what we're doing in this podcast, right? I mean, almost in near real time where may mga filters at na-edit yung ano natin, no? Makes us look better or more handsome
Well, I mean,
on an more automated manner.
yeah.
Parang ganun din. But this time, they have people and some other tools that can do it not only manually, but pero may, kumbaga, it's more high grade, I would say.
Yeah, right. So,
But it's not expensive. It's not expensive.
Yun
Like
nga eh.
100,000 to 200,000, depending
you
on
can
the...
come up with something quite very believable,
That's
all right? That could, unfortunately convince a significant amount of people. So, nakakatakot na siya in a sense that, I was looking at some of the works on AI and how they have been improving on an exponential scale. Some were looking at like every year 10 times better, for instance. Although some would say that's quite an exaggeration. But, like the other night, I was just talking to some folks who were using AI to look at, sentiments, online and digital footprint to be able to predict yung Senate race of Philippines. And quite interesting yung some of the movements and data I saw. So, for instance, they were able to see 2 weeks, 3 weeks earlier than a lot of analog surveys that akyat ito mga kandidato na to. Let's say Amy Marcos going up, or let's say going down, or let's say, I don't know, Kiko becoming more competitive, things like that. So you can see how significant it's improving and how it's so very affordable. I mean,
Correct,
this was a
yeah.
quite small San Francisco-based company who was doing that, and they were asking me for giving on-the-ground expertise. So ako yung parang, I make it high-grade looking, right? Yung parang sinasabi mo na my intervention. Now, going back to this, of course, the biggest breakthrough in of the year so far is the Deepseek, right? So we were talking about deep fake. Now, let's talk about the other deep thing, Deepseek. What does the Deepseek phenomenon really say? Because on one hand, maraming natutuwa kasi parang ano daw parang na-booking na exaggerated, purong hype lang yung mga big tech sa US, asking for billions and billions and if not trillions, right? To say we need to invest this and that. And some would say Deepseek was a kind of a way to burst that bubble. And Nvidia saw a 16% drop, which for a multi-trillion-dollar economy is hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So on one hand, w- does that mean that China is really becoming a kind of an AI superpower? And the
Mhm.
fact that DeepSeek was different in one sense, right? Um, Not only was it developed very cheap, right, with kind of a lower grade semiconductors, but you could see the inner skeleton, right? Para siyang beta, ng
Correct,
games,
correct,
di ba? So this is a complete different business model. Except
correct,
by the
correct.
time many people caught up with it, parang bawal na yata, you have to have China-based phones na to get into it.
Mhm.
Because I was so interested to ask it very interesting questions, right, about the political situation in China, and I'm sure I was never going to get a good answer. From your standpoint, or from the DICT, I mean, particularly, like, what did the DeepSeek phenomenon really mean?
Okay. Now, now, uh, before I answer, I would just like to contextualize. AI is a very difficult subject, and the ethics of AI falls not only on the content but also on the algorithms or the mathematics used in order to create these predictions. No. So hindi ako, I will not delve into that, but we can have a separate discussion on AI ethics. But here are the major concerns from our Cybersecurity Bureau and DICT, and these are facts. These are facts. Number one, it seems that DeepSeek is practicing censorship. Now, we can always discuss the ethics of censorship. Is it correct to use, is it correct to censor answers from an AI bot? For example, you ask about the nine dash line.
Right.
It might explain it, but when you say the nine dash line and the claims of the Philippines and Vietnam, it might say, actually, last time we checked, it said, can we, I'm not I'm not, I can't answer
I'm not
that.
trained to
I'm not
answer
trained
it.
to
Yeah,
answer
mga
that. Can we
ganyan. Yeah,
discuss some
yeah,
other
yeah,
things?
yeah,
We discuss about Tiananmen Square, about certain people who died,
yeah.
and then they'll do the same thing. In fact, in the beta version, may lalabas na sagot. Which means alam niya yung sagot. Lalabas.
Interesting.
And I have a video of that. And then i-delete niya. So the use of censorship in an AI system, that's one, no? And how I'm not saying, well, I understand it's a Chinese product and the China is trying to protect its image, but what we're saying is where are the ethical boundaries there? Number two, um, do you know that when we checked, it seems that DeepSeek is also sending clear text, clear text inquiries to some servers in ByteDance. So it seems that they're connected. No, TikTok, it's quite surprising, no? But they are connected, and we have proof of this that they are inquiring into certain servers, not only from China but from other attendant applications like TikToks. Well, if TikTok is with ByteDance, so what is DeepSeek trying to do, querying those particular servers? Or maybe TikTok also has a
Mm.
baka meron silang kontrata also with some other.
But that's how it works in China, right?
Yeah.
There's tremendous, if you look at their relevant ministries, grabe yung corralling and coordination na ginagawa nila. I mean, that's where China
That's
is,
correct. Yeah.
they're the golden standard when it comes to really public administration at the most high-tech level, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes pushing against mergers, sometimes coming down hard on some of the tech billionaires and big tech companies, whether it's Tencent or ByteDance. So I think people have to understand that China is a completely different system, right? Because people tend to think of China as just another fast-growing capitalist economy. Look at all of these fascinating new cars and all. And the point is, those things didn't come about out of nowhere, right? As I mean, I love the Chinese people. They're hardworking,
Yes.
they're
Yes.
innovative, they have brilliant engineers. They produce more engineers every year than most other Western countries combined. I get it, but I think people forget that the hand of the state is always there. In fact, Xi Jinping, before he became the Supreme of China, when he was just the party chief, right? Uh, I think this was in before he went to Shanghai, Zhejiang, if I'm not mistaken. He wrote a series of essays. He used to write op-eds, and one of them was like, "You need two hands. One is the hand of the market, the so-called invisible hand of the market, certain degree of market competition, but the other hand is a decisive hand of the state." To
Mhm.
make sure the market moves in the right direction. These are writings out there that you can find and research about. And we, as scholars of China, have been writing about these things for
Yeah.
quite some time. So in real time, we're seeing that. So going back again to the DeepSeek one,
DeepSeek. Yeah.
before going to TikTok, because that's another interesting conversation we can have.
Yeah.
Um, what does it tell us? Because it just tells you the depth of capability of China and their ability to uh, not spontaneously, but really come up with these breakthrough moments and then immediately reintegrate it into the kind of a state system,
That's
right?
correct.
So
Yes.
Deepseek now you can use it to enter different government offices.
Mhm.
We know in China the threshold is very high, so a Tesla car cannot enter any government offices. No government offices are encouraged. In fact, they're actively discouraged from using any software that is not China developed,
Yes.
right? I mean, even yung mga Microsoft Word, ganyan, hindi pwede yan. And of course, I know the context because the context was yung si Edward Snowden, yung whistleblower from the US intelligence more than 10 years ago. He said that actually the US software was being used to infiltrate the China
Mhm.
systems and all of that. So after that, they completely wiped out anything that is not China developed. So this is the level of technological sophistication we're seeing in China today. Are you worried that people may get over impressed with China and then just haplessly download? I mean, are Filipinos should Filipinos be careful with downloading this new interesting stuff coming out of China?
Number one, I think that having many tools available for the public. But let's separate two things. First, the public is fine if you're using it for your research. Just make sure that you have multiple tools, and then you compare which whose answers actually are more academic and whose answers are more censored. I guess no.
Mm.
So having multiple
But don't
tools.
use it in my classroom because you're gonna get
Yeah,
a
you get
zero. You're gonna get a zero. Yeah,
so
yeah.
so in these particular examples, it's okay that you have many tools. Now let's talk to the sa ano naman sa public sector, especially for use of government. Now here we have to be very careful. So the OST and the ICT are jointly developing, no, under the administration of the president Bongbong Marcos, are developing our own AI capabilities for managing our own data, so that we don't have to use any foreign other. Because our data is sovereign. And remember, you as you trusted your data to government. You can't avoid it. When you applied for your PhilHealth,
Yeah.
minsan nga hindi mo alam, automatic yun eh. Di ba? You
Yeah.
have your PhilHealth, you have your ITR, you have your BIR, etc. And it is to the best interest also of government to use this data in a more harmonious manner. So here, we don't have to use these foreign, kasi alam natin, nagpapadala sila ng data to their own servers.
Yeah,
Eh.
of course.
So here we have to use our own data, our own AI systems, which we are developing along with the OST, so that we can have a more secure data analytics tool and a machine learning tool for our own use. And we laud the OST, for example, because they're also trying to use AI, for example, um, in more in to help mankind. For example, in order to preserve our own indigenous languages,
Yeah.
which are disappearing. Not because people are disappearing, but because people are transforming and they're using more localized,
Hybrid, yeah,
hybrid
language, yeah.
language. And then, but we have to preserve these indigenous languages, because from here, I'm not a student of sociology or anthropology, but I know that these are important in order to trace our history, etc. No? So um, for public consumption, and let me be clear, for public consumption, go ahead and use whatever tool that you need to use, but be careful and just be mindful of how these things or these AI systems communicate to the outside world and to their internal systems, like I mentioned sa DeepSeek. Now, for security purposes, yung sovereign data natin, yung data ng public, ng mga taong bayan, for that, I think we need to be more circumspect. And I'm not talking only about DeepSeek, no? I'm also talking about ChatGPT. I'm also talking about the entire. Marami na kasi. You remember Google as Gemini?
But again, are they the same? Because in the case
No.
of the United States, the government there has limitations in terms of their ability to access and control the big
Yes.
tech companies. Now, where obviously there are a lot of evidence that U.S. intelligence communities, for instance, even if encrypted down WhatsApp, some would say they're still allowed in certain circumstances, but you need, I think, a court intervention for that. Hindi siya bara-bara. But my
Yeah.
understanding is China doesn't work that way. If the commissar in the company said, do X, Y, and Z, you do X, Y, and Z. There's, yeah.
You're right about that, no? So, but like I said, AI is a very complex thing, no? How would I say it? So, I was present in the launching of the AI report by the British Embassy. I was also invited to the AI summit in Paris, but I wasn't able to come because of some visa problems. So yes, even government officials have visa problems, so I wasn't able to come. But the discussion, you know, that how complex AI is. So sending data and the use of incorrect data is one thing. Let's call that content problems.
Mm.
Kumbaga, the AI itself, if it has bad data, then it will produce hallucinations or false information. But there is one other thing, and that's that we are completely forgetting. A lot of these experts, some of them are not even computer scientists, some are physicists, some are mathematicians, have put a lot of time and effort fixing the algorithm itself, making sure that the mathematics behind it and the way these neural networks think from a machine level does not introduce bias. Yun yung nakakalimutan ng mga tao. And that's where it should be made public so that people like us, or maybe not me, the more mathematical
They
geniuses
can
out
see the
there,
beta,
they
this,
can
yeah, yeah, the dirty
see.
kitchen behind the.
That's
Yeah, yeah,
correct.
yeah.
And that's where we're concerned about cutting corners. Now, I'm not saying that the algorithm being used by Deepseek has a problem. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we should be mindful of cutting corners because here we're talking about neural networks which has the potential to be self-replicating or self-learning. They're not yet, but they have that potential. Kumbaga, it's the
Mm.
same way as testing, inserting human DNA on animals, which has an ethical problem
This
when it comes to
you might get
experimentation.
some weird mutations,
That's correct.
basically, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's the same with AI. Yun yung sinasabi natin na it's a very complex thing, but the algorithm problem, which is being discussed also, is something that we should safeguard for the betterment of humanity. Because if that becomes an algorithm that is very, very biased, especially if you know na talagang linagyan mo ng bias, edi yung AI will produce not only wrong information, but you might find an AI that's racist also.
Yeah, we had that with Google, I think,
Yeah.
not long ago. And some people are saying, for instance, certain phones have a better filter for certain
For certain
racial
language.
categories,
That's
right? So,
correct.
kunyari, again, I don't want to name drop, but some of the big Asian brand phones, have you noticed if you use them on an Asian face, mas magandang pag-filter niya.
That's
And then
correct.
when you use, we don't have to name names, but certain, phones developed in non-Western, pansin mo yung mga Caucasian friends mo come off much better than the
Yeah.
non-Caucasian one. And
That's
I
correct.
was told actually by someone who used to work in Pentagon. She was an African American, and she told me, it's like, look at these phones, right? It's not properly filtering the non-white people in these pictures. And I never noticed, like,
Correct.
oh, ano, sabi ko, yeah, so,
If you're a heavily Asian featured
yeah, hindi
person,
niya
and then you
ma-filter.
apply a filter on it, nagmumukha kang Caucasian. Baliktad.
Yeah, or something like that, right? So you can already see the algorithmic bias there. Nevertheless, I mean, you have been in your current position. Obviously, previously you were in the private sector, but in your current position in the past 2 years, 3 years alone, it's the compression of time, no? The cycles of innovation, or what, the
Correct.
Schumpeterian creative destruction, right? It's really fast.
Correct.
Anong, like in just the past 2 years, Usec, ano mga napansin mo in terms of this constant battle to get the algorithm right, this constant battle to make sure you have certain ethical parameters, and also national security wise in terms of our adjustment?
I think with AI, we still have a lot to learn. And I think the private sector is outpacing government regulations. I think we should have a basic framework of ethical standards for the use of AI and for the development of AI. And that is being developed. Sa United Nations, malayo pa eh. But we have to ask a lot of questions. For example, putting AI into lethal autonomous weaponry. Diba? And these types of discussions has to be discussed not only with us, but also in the international community. So there's a lot of things that we have to deal with. And in fact,
The European Union has developed a kind of framework around
yes,
AI.
they did.
And we had, I think, Vice President J.D. Vance in the Munich Security Conference the other week, kind of pushing back against that. Because I know the American argument is, you got China, they have no privacy laws or rights, really, in the real sense of the word. And hindi naintindihan ng tao yan eh. Kasi when you look at the
Correct,
large
correct.
language model, it's really how much you can feed it.
Correct.
And
That's
so
information.
people like Kai-Fu Lee or like the AI gurus have been saying that. So
I'll give you a very, very, baba natin konti yung diskusyon para mas maintindihan ng tao. Bigyan kita ng napaka-basic na problem. Di ba merong right to be forgotten? Meron. If I don't want my profile to be seen in Facebook, for example, merong regulation sa Europe that I can have my entire profile, my entire digital existence in
Goes
Facebook
off.
removed.
Yeah.
It goes off. Is there a similar way of doing that in AI data structures? That's so difficult, especially because persistence is a characteristic of the internet. In fact, merong internet archives, ha. So meron
So
talagang
for life
server.
ka na, yo. Oo
Yeah,
nga
for
eh.
life ka na. So that's thing, things that we need to talk about. I know. And by the way, the private sector advisory council and the president have been this. The private sector advisory council had suggested some ways of creating an AI council, and the president also ordered the OST and the ICT to come up with a AI roadmap. DTI also has a AI roadmap, but it's more about the industry. But we have, you're right. We now have to. There is now a presidential directive that government has to look into this and create a governance framework for AI. Kasi mahirap eh, kasi everybody's using it eh.
Yeah, everybody's using it. And yun nga, so can we, yung ginawa nila sa European Union, could that be a blueprint for democracies? Because I think,
Yeah, I think so.
obviously, Europe is known for its robust bureaucracy, and some would say it's too robust. As I said, I just mentioned the American critic of that. There's also this argument that, if we don't do it, China will do it, and then we'll have a structural competitive disadvantage, which could have very strict geopolitical implications. Pero pagdating sa atin, at the end of the day, if we want to develop an ethical framework, pwede ba point of reference, for instance?
Yes, actually, we're using that.
Yeah.
European unions and also the UK's AI safety report. By the way, which ang Pilipinas was represented there.
Right.
Mr. Ligot represented the Philippines there as a private sector consultant there. And also, there are similar discussions happening in the United Nations, for example. Pero mas political naman doon. No? Halimbawa lang, I already mentioned the use of AI in lethal autonomous weaponry,
Yeah.
etc. So yes, we're active here. But I would like to discuss a third problem. Sabi
Please,
ko nga,
please.
AI is a very, very,
It's an immense world.
it's
if
a
I
men's
can-
world.
Yeah, I would,
Another
yeah.
problem is displacement of workers. I'm not saying they're gonna lose their jobs. Huh? I'm just saying
Yeah.
that their jobs will be replaced. Have you heard, for example, Richard, of a job? May job posting na ngayon na AI trainer, prompt engineer, for example. So may trainer na may prompt engineer. What the hell is a prompt engineer? It's a way of it's a prompt engineer. A person's job is to be able to ask precise questions or structure precise questions to an AI. So what I'm trying to say is these yung the way we learn we yung jobs natin ngayon, we need to also be trained in AI if we want to move on, especially sa BPO sector, which contributes significantly to
So
our
AI proficiency.
AI proficiency on multiple levels, from engineering to how to use it properly. Kasi dati-rati may EA ka nagagawa ng presentation mo. Ngayon si Copilot ng Microsoft. It can even lay out your presentations
yung
for
Zoom
you.
namin sa, I'm sure any professional like Zoom namin sa UP. So after I teach class, right? AI will come with all of this summary.
Correct. With
And
summary.
sometimes it's even better than what I noticed while listening. Like, oh nga no, yung sinabi na yan, diba? And then my caveat pa rin siya, they're this is not the final, blah, blah, blah. But like, that was quite scary to me. It's like, wow, ito yung level. So, doesn't that create a kind of an AI proficient Brahmin class, right? Na yung section ng society na proficient na in terms of language, connections, has a chance to sit down with more informed people, na sila, dahil magaling na sila makipag-interact sa AI, they can, kumbaga, augmented yung kanilang skills
Correct,
lalo.
yes.
While yung huge part of the population na parang na-mystify lang sa AI, ano yan, ayoko hawakan yan, lalo sila mapag-iwanan. Kasi may digital divide na tayo. So is AI divide the next phase?
Oh, yes. Not only the AI, so there are two types of AI divide, no?
Right.
Richard. Number one is the AI divide on people who can use AI and not use AI. And then people will find
Yeah.
themselves being dinosaured out of their
Yeah.
jobs, right? But the second is the economic divide being produced
Yeah.
by AI. As more AI-enabled jobs are introduced into the market, then your labor force has to develop. If your labor force does not develop, then you have an economic problem. So that we have to go into. Plus, yung digital divide lalong lumalaki. AI and consumes a lot of energy. An AI GPU based rack is like 40 watts or 40 kilowatts, while a regular rack is only 10 kilowatts.
Four
They
times.
they 4 times more heat, 4 times consuming of energy.
Yeah.
In fact, that data centers that uses AI or AI data centers have to use a dielectric, linulubog na yung server para lang mag-cool off.
Yeah.
So, yes, they use more resources, they use a lot of power. Plus, sino bang may hawak ng chipset technology? The patents on it, etc. So, lumalaki rin yung digital divide. They use a lot of bandwidth, so connectivity is required, di ba? Data centers are required. If we don't catch up, ito yung magiging problem na. And this is what where the SET is trying to level up the field. Kasi the hyperscalers are moving into Vietnam, Indonesia, no? And then we're asking Google and Microsoft, are you not moving to the Philippines? Then they said, the investment regime has to give us more tax breaks. We have to also solve some of the minor issues with our power, etc. No? So I, what I'm trying to say is that this digital divide will go wider and wider
Yeah.
if we don't work on it right now.
Your own previous sector, the BPO industry.
Yes.
I deal with a lot because they invite me a lot to give geopolitical, big picture stuff. Because, for instance, will the Trump administration also go into services? For instance,
Yeah.
so far the tariffs is on all products. So, nevertheless, the thing with the BPO industry sa Filipinas is pinag-usapan parati anong pwedeng impact ng AI. Ang pagkaintindi ko dito is, ang nangyari kasi is AI can increasingly do the kind of stuff at the lower rungs
That's
of the
correct.
ladder. Yung mga basic na, kunyan, paano ko i-turn on itong laptop ko, yung mga ganun. So increasingly, you need a workforce that can come at the point of intervention dun sa mas mataas na level.
Correct.
Once the conversation gets a little bit too complicated, then papasok yung tao, diba? Yun magpa-prompt
I'll
ka.
give you a very concrete example. I worked with a BPO before I went to government in 2017 and back. No, at that time, 2016, 2017, 2015, nababawasan na yung voice, yung contact center agents na voice, yung
Yeah.
sumasagot.
Yeah.
Mas na madami yung back end. And yung mga back-end call center, sorry, let's not call it call center agents. Yung back-end agents, ang ginagawa niyan, mas analysis na. You know why? Kasi nung unang panahon, back in the 90s, di ba, you are asked with option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. Oh, by the way, lost credit card, option 2. Di ba, ganon. Ngayon kasi, you just tell your prompt on the phone. Say, hey, by the way, I have a problem with my credit card. I lost my credit card.
Boom,
You don't
diretso.
have to click a option. It will automatically say, okay, you lost your credit card, then you go to this. So nagbabago na yung BPO industry. In fact, mas malaki na yung back office servicing. Kasama na yung mga legal, Filipinos are being hired to be transcribers for legal documents, management of knowledge bases. And a lot of this are semi-automated. So they're using AI for categorization, for example, and for storing data. But you still need a human to prompt the AI and train them. So it's not just it happened as early as 2015, 2016 when I was still in the BPO industry. So this is as real as it gets. Yung sinasabi ko na displacement in jobs. And you will, if you get
So
a
what are we
chance to-
doing in the government in order to prepare people? Is the
Oh, we're offering
TESTA,
trainings.
the OST,
Yeah.
coordination with how do we create a AI proficient at least at the minimum level?
Yeah, so
as many
DICT
people
is
as-
offering a lot of trainings for this. We're also we're also giving some funding for trainings that are attuned with the BPO industry for the displaced workers. No? So we have that. For example, we have AI enabled training for digital marketing. And that's for free, yeah. And you can just visit the DICT website. You'll be able to see all the trainings that we're giving. Number 2 is we're also using AI against AI. We're using AI to detect AI generated content. We're using AI, for example, our Cybersecurity Bureau's National Security Operations Center analyzed 256 million logs in 2024. No human can do that. So we're also using AI to manage 256 million logs. We blocked 5.4 million malicious attempts in 2024. Again, It was automatic. It was an AI also being trained to detect malicious behavior.
Are we in a warfare, in a hybrid warfare situation in that sense? Because I want to wrap up this discussion because in the last part, I want to talk about the national security implications
Mhm.
here, right? On one hand, itong issue ng China-backed troll farms is being openly studied. There was the
That's
a
correct.
data study last year that looked at
Yeah.
really all of this evidence that shows that mukhang may foreign-backed malign foreign interference. There was a study by ASPI of Australia, which we also discussed in the past, that look at these factors. You had the hearing recently that you attended. There were issues about jurisdiction of different companies. Can we talk a little bit about how serious is this? Let's call it like China-backed troll farms in the
Mhm.
Philippines. Yeah.
So there are two types of quote unquote trolls. Now let's talk about real trolls, which are technically real people who can
Mm,
ano, who can respond in a troll-like manner. One-liner that
yeah.
actually is
Yeah.
funny,
Yeah. Yeah.
and people will notice it. And then there are bots. Bots are just palaman para paramihin yung negative
Yeah, comments. Or yung emoji. Pansin ko yung ano
emojis
oh,
lang,
yung
emojis. Yeah.
kunyari si President BBM pag nagsispeech siya, ang daming mga 600,000 emoji na parang tinatroll siya, di
Yeah,
ba?
yeah,
That
yeah.
very
Those are
much,
bots.
those are bots. It looks
Yeah.
very on ano.
And again, I would like to call Meta and Meta Philippines why they're not doing anything about it. Kasi I can see even AI-generated content pumapasa sa kanilang sponsored ads. May sponsored
So
ads.
may butas talaga yung
May
sistema.
butas yung system ni
And we
Meta.
have jurisdiction over them, right? Just to be clear from legal.
No, that's the one we're talking in Congress nga.
Mm.
We don't have jurisdiction because they're an American company. Unless we tell them that the only way you can operate in the Philippines is to have
Well,
a
that's what I'm saying
Philippine
because you
office.
had the case of Brazil that they had a back and forth with Twitter, right?
That's
Even like
correct.
we will ban you if you don't do the following things. So we have a sovereign prerogative. If okay, let me use that word. Do we have a sovereign prerogative to really pressure these companies to
Yes, I think
get their
so.
act together?
So,
Because
yeah.
this is serious. We have elections.
A lot of statistics are already telling us that we're the third largest Meta slash Facebook slash
Yeah.
Instagram user in the world. Even though we're a very small country, we're still 120 million strong
Mm.
population. So yes, and we have the tools to do so. We're not using it because there is no law, and we're not into the habit of breaking any law. But if Congress passes a law that says you can block a particular platform for not following Philippine law, there is a technology to do that. It's not really that expensive. I mean, less than 1 billion
Yeah.
pesos can be put up just so we can have that particular capability. So yes, the answer is we can do that, but we need the law because right now there
Mm.
is no regulation for social media. It's like a wild, wild west of, and then, there's not even a law penalizing troll farms. Huh? There's none. I
Yeah.
mean, assuming tomorrow we raid a call center and then they admit employing 100 people
In
as
a
troll
troll farm.
farms,
Yeah.
what's
What's your legal basis?
what's your legal
Yeah.
case? Diba?
Right.
Wala. I mean, what do we do? So
Mm.
we need to, and there is by the way, there are bills passed in Congress as early as December of last year, um, penalizing troll farms. Kasi you're spewing propaganda. And let's face it, propaganda and the use of information in warfare is as old as time. Diba? That's why,
And it could be very dangerous. Like, God forbid, may conflict tayo sa West Philippine Sea, then biglang ma-activate itong mga troll farm to downplay the conflict. Yung pala, may namamatay na mga sundalo. Yung pala, sinasakop na yung Pangasinan or something, then you can create this.
correct.
Which brings me to the last point. There's no way I'm gonna let go of you without talking about our good friends in TikTok.
Yeah.
Just when I thought things are getting interesting, so last month I was in ASEAN for a conference, and pagbalik ko, next time, suddenly banned yung account ko. I was like, what? Weird. And then I even appealed it because because I get trollish also. Like if you troll me, basusin mo ako, I'll reply with like an emoji of a clown or something like that. But to use that as a basis to ban you was like, this is like someone is a bit too excited to ban Richard Hidarian. So I made some calls to our friends here in TikTok Philippines. Thankfully, shout out to them. Inayos sila kaagad. I'm sure you also know these common friends of ours. But my thing kasi is the very reason I got more active about TikTok is iba yung market. Pansin ko, andun din yung mga trolls ng isang camp na we know which camp this is. But this is also because now we're seeing the advent of TikTok elections.
That's correct, yes.
The Indonesian elections last year, ang laki ng role ng TikTok, grabe. Both in terms of campaign strategy and also in terms of consumption by Gen Z. Some would say a lot of the last minute slivers of vote that Trump was able to win over was because he was very active on TikTok. And you can see he even tried to reverse the ban on TikTok once he came into office. So I won't be surprised the upcoming elections in the Philippines could be a quote unquote TikTok elections,
yeah.
given how Gen Zs are very dependent on this and how it's easy to go viral on it compared to
correct,
any other. Because on other platforms, you need to have millions of followers or hundreds of thousands of followers to constantly go viral at a certain level. Ang hirap yan. But with TikTok, anyone can do something viral. What are we doing with the TikTok question? Because it's still for me a mystery.
Yeah.
Like the guys here, they say all the right thing, but I don't know if they're really calling the shots. I think the guys calling the shots are the engineers and folks in,
Of course.
in Beijing.
Yeah, of course, they're not calling the shot here. But I think that's the reason why you should attend the TRICOM, the Trilateral Committee hearing. TikTok is also not attending, so maybe you should get a face
Pressure
off.
natin.
Yeah, but you're right. Now there's another form of malinformation or misinformation, and that is the threat of shadow bans. Tirang hindi mo alam na ban ka pala, o you are put in an archive. Now I talked to TikTok. I don't know if I'm authorized to reveal our discussions and to the person that I was talking
Yeah,
to.
but to the degree that you can publicly say that at least you're reaching out to them and
Yes,
trying
I
to
did.
share,
I did.
including my case, na clearly
Actually, I
I've
did.
been shadow banned.
I take your
Yeah.
case. Ang sabi nila is that in their community guidelines, they're saying that actually politics and the discussion of politics or like political campaigning is actually not um, encouraged in TikTok, and unlike Twitter, unlike Facebook. Kumbaga, they just want it to be a
Happy.
very happy place where you can dance and sing. I don't know.
I'm not sure about that because I saw some of our friends attacking the government and getting easily
correct.
millions of views.
That's correct.
It looks like a certain type of political narrative. So, yun kaya nga na tumataas ang kilay ko.
Plus,
diba?
good luck imposing that particular rule. Because how do you classify satire? Is that for entertainment?
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's also a political commentary.
Kaya
in
nga
an
nagpo-post
entertaining
ako ng
view.
mga budots Yung mga budots dance.
Baka pa nagsayaw ka, hindi ka na nila i-shadow ban.
One got through, but the other one hindi.
So I think that's a discussion we can make in Congress and would also be very interesting.
You think it's urgent? You think it's time?
I think. And plus, the ICT actually supports regulating social media platforms. We're not into banning, we're not into censorship. But at least they should follow law. They should be equal in their presentation of facts.
Yeah.
And if somebody questioned their facts, it should also be given an equivalent airtime. Let's say, oh, mali yan. They should at least put this might be bad, incorrect context, or this post lacks context. Be careful. I'm all for that. You don't have to ban it naman. Just say, mukhang may mali dito.
Yeah.
This looks like a fake generation of news. This looks like a fake video.
They
et cetera,
flag
et
it,
cetera.
yeah.
Just flag it.
Or at least some sort of disclaimer.
Disclaimer,
Or something. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. On that, I would say encouraging note, because I've been saying this for quite some time. Maybe we want to look into some of these platforms and all of that and not get overexcited. And believe me, I'm saying all of these things with a lot of admiration for what China has achieved throughout the years. I just gave a lecture the other day about the rise of rise of BYD, for instance, and
Oh, yeah.
and
Electric cars.
Chinese industrial policy and all of that. So, but at the end of the day,
And they have a Leo na.
exactly. But at the end of the day, it's national security, and we have a serious problem of all of these troll farms undermining our position in the West Philippine Sea. But then again, sabi nung isang magaling na congressman, meron pa ba ang West Philippine Sea? Kaya tinatag siya kahapon na ito yung Google Map, ito yung West Philippine Sea.
Mukhang alam ko yan.
Yeah, okay. On that one, thank you very much, Usec, for that fantastic, really kind of a deep dive style discussion. So we call this episode series and all this podcast as Pilipinas 360. So we're really looking at all aspects. So within the quote-unquote limited time we had, I hope we covered a lot of bases in terms of different types of algorithmic biases. Tinignan natin yung differential impacts sa labor market. But at least yung ating talagang mahalaga sa akin yan is in terms of making sure there's an accountability and also not national security threat. So maraming salamat, Usec. I'm sure we're gonna have more of you And I encourage for people like you to stay in the government. And now that
Thank you, Richard.
without saying more, I'll keep it there.
Thank you, thank
Maraming
you.
salamat. Thank you very much. So thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of Pilipinas 360 Degrees. Katulad ng pinangako ko, pag-usapan talaga natin lahat ng mga dimensions ng isang mahalagang issue, whether itong issue ay artificial intelligence, na medyo geeky, dorky, technical, or in the future, pag-usapan din natin yung mga more gut issues, food security, economic development. So lahat yan pag-usapan natin dito. And of course, yung ating paborito, issues related to West Philippine Sea and sovereign rights. So thank you very much for joining this latest episode of Pilipinas 360 Degrees.